Serious students who were taught by a teacher that turned out to be a criminal. What were they like when they taught you? My 7th grade pet teacher. I wasn't in pet because of health issues, but was in his health class a few times. All the girls in my class told me to avoid him at all costs. They said he touched their butts, stared at them, and peeked in the locker room multiple times. The first class I had with him, I tried to stay quiet and unnoticed. Everyone else was being rowdy, and he came up to me and said I was his favorite. I wasn't sure what to think of him, so I asked my little sister, 3rd grade at same school, what she thought of him. She said he tickles the girls and pets their hair and gives them piggyback rides. I told her to never let him touch her at all whatsoever. He was also really aggressive with the male students and pushed a boy in my class into a wall once. The principal wouldn't do anything about him despite knowing all these things he did. He was eventually let go when the parents of these kids got involved. A few years later he was arrested for repeated sexual assault of a young child. Makes me sick to think about. My gym teacher seemed like a normal gym teacher. That is, a little odd, and wore shorts that seemed almost indecently short. Well, the year after I graduate he gets busted for child porn. Not just looking at child porn, he was creating child porn. I don't think they found anything taken in the high school itself, but there were former students of his in there. He ended up killing himself in his jail cell while awaiting trial. His wife worked at the school as a literature teacher, but was forced to leave by the PTA. That bothers me, just because she wasn't involved, and was actually a really good teacher. My senior year of high school my social studies teacher was a handsome early 30s man. He was a coach they just stuck in that room to give us crosswords and default crappy assignments. We never did anything. He was nice and chill, just kinda played on his phone while we did whatever. He usually had the cheerleader sitting on the corner of his desk laughing. I guess the social aspect of that class was him fucking every underage teenage girl that would smile at him. It was sad. He literally had a kind and beautiful wife who taught at the elementary school. When she would bring him lunch she'd have these loving smiles on her face. They had 2 young children together. The combination of cheating and statutory must have just been crushing. Well, it came out about 5 years after I graduated that the rumor he was sleeping with his students was very true. I forget how many counts now, but apparently he would tell every one of them she was special and the only one ever. A couple of the only ever special girls somehow got in contact with each other, realized the sick shit he was doing, and rallied everyone else to turn him in. Great news is, the loving wife is now remarried to a great guy, who is a real father to her girls. There was a teacher at my middle school who was weird, not outright creepy, but just really strange mannerisms. He spoke in a strangely high-pitched voice, not in an effeminate manner, just weirdly high, and called students things like chitlins and dolls. I was never in his class, but saw him every now and then. One time he caught a friend and I chatting at the water fountain. When we should been in class, he took us back to our teacher and told her he caught us having a tea party at the water fountain. Weird guy, but not really sinister seeming. Anyway, it came out a couple years later that he was a pedophile and child pornographer. As far as I know he was never convicted of actually touching a minor. He would apparently invite 12 to 13-year-old male students over to his house for tutoring, with their parents' permission, then unexpectedly have to leave for a half hour or so. He would leave pornography out where the kids would easily find it, and had hidden cameras set up to videotape them, when they inevitably did what 12 to 13-year-old males do when they are alone and discover pornography. Creepy fucker. Years after I graduated I saw my old high school Spanish teacher in the paper for selling/buying pills. Was not really surprised as she was out for over 2 years from a severe back injury during a car accident. Pill addictions are no joke, and happen to all types of people. My 11th grade physics teacher was arrested for meth possession and child neglect. The police found meth residue in her kids' board game boxes when I was in 12th grade. I had her first period and she always came in a few minutes late and always seemed very frazzled. She always had her 5-year-old with her in class, I think because the daycare run by my high school didn't start until after first period ended. She would run through a week's worth of material in one 45-minute class and then spend the rest of the week clearing up all the confusion she created. Then when the test came around, she would just walk around the class solving problems on the test for us. My friends and I just played poker in the back of the room for the entire second half of the school year once we realized that she completely didn't give a shit about anything. One time her kid wasn't feeling well, so in order to placate him, she played the movie Wall-E for us. No one was surprised when she was arrested. There was a math teacher at my high school who had a typical alpha male personality. He liked to stand with his nose in the air and look down at everyone as they entered his class/study hall, spoke boisterously to assert his dominance, and often would say such things as, "Are we going to have a problem here? Excuse me, do I need to intervene?" etc. Turns out, he liked to download kid porn on the school provided computer and was promptly fired. It was so satisfying. The principal of my high school was caught embezzling money from the school. She was a nice person and developed the school in many positive ways. It was a screwed up situation in which her husband had cancer and they couldn't afford the bills. Also, a rabbi from my elementary school was arrested for something pedophilia related, not sure if porn or molestation. He was creepy and invited all the kids to sit on his lap. People were fine with this until they weren't. My 7th grade science teacher had been molesting the girls for a decade before he was caught. He tried to flee the country back into Croatia when he found out people were onto him. The really sad thing was that I got along well with him and really liked his teaching style and how he ran his class. Before I found out the horrors that he committed behind closed doors, I actually considered him to be one of my favorite teachers. My econ teacher in high school was beloved by the entire school. Hysterical, vulgar, in a funny way, understanding, treated 17-year-olds like adults, which was a great feeling and a first for a lot of the kids in his class, and was a fantastic teacher with a great pass rate. He made learning about stagflation and the minute workings of the stock market into a fun activity that we actually looked forward to every day. He gets voted Teacher of the Year every 3 years or so and has been at the school for about a decade. He still teaches there and no legal action has been brought against him, but it's an open secret that 3 freshman girls, 15 years old, have given him blowjobs in a nearby bathroom. I adored him when I was in his class, and until I learned that information last year, he was firmly on my top 5 all-time favorite teachers list. My teacher when I was 10/11 was actually a great teacher. All the mums loved him, and he taught us kids a lot and prepared us for secondary school. He was the one who got me interested in amateur dramatics. Cue about 9 years later, the morning paper has just dropped through the litter box. I unfold it, and he's staring back at me. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison for having an adult relationship with an 11-year-old girl. He also took her on holiday and paraded her in front of other pedophiles. Sickening. In my first year of secondary school, I was taught by 2 men who turned out to be pedophiles. One raped a girl, and the other possessed "indecent images." They were both odd teachers, but not that sort of odd. I liked them both, and was surprised to find out what happened to them. And due to typical teenage humor, they both became the bogeyman who was said to be hiding in that dark room, or in the hole in the ceiling. 8th grade science teacher, can't remember what he did, but I saw his mugshot online a few years ago. This dude looks like the lead singer of Jane's Addiction, but somehow more athletic, and with crazier eyes. He had a high-pitched voice that made you want to die, and the only thing he did was play documentaries on the apocalypse during class. Gotta love the NC education system. I made an account just to tell this story, but it'll probably get lost. Wasn't a teacher, but a janitor at my middle school. He was always a little weird and off-putting, and would yell at kids for talking too loud or being in the hallways during class. My one weird experience with him was when I was staying after school for a club and I went to use the bathroom. I walked in, and he was in there cleaning the stalls, so I began to step out, and I was doing, so he told me I could still use the bathroom and he'd just be there cleaning. Of course that made me uncomfortable, so I left, but I never really told anyone about it. Years later my parents saw in the paper that the janitor of my middle school had gotten arrested for sexually molesting his own daughter, who was 6, and other girls at the school. It was in fact the same janitor. Holy crap, I can answer this one. My physics teacher was fantastic. I was not a good student. I wasn't motivated at all. I was a C/D student, just enough to get by. I loved my physics class, and I got on in my first semester much to the surprise of everybody. Because of my grades in other classes I almost didn't get into this class. My grade in that class started to drop off in the second semester, and I was sitting at a low B. A couple more missed homework assignments and I would have been getting a C. The teacher apparently cared about his students enough to check up on them. I didn't have any particularly great relationship with the man, and he came by my desk and asked me why my grade was slipping and if everything was okay at home, because all of my other grades were even worse. I worked and I got that grade back up and finished out the class with A's. I didn't really talk to him outside of regular teacher/student environment. At one point my mom, who was so blown away that I got a good grade, went into the school to talk to him and thank him for somehow motivating this kid she was having an impossible time with. Apparently that meeting didn't go well. He was very standoffish and my mom walked away with a bad feeling about him. Mom has great intuition. Turns out teacher man was a pedophile. He used to run a male beauty pageant at the school and nobody thought anything of it. It was a lot of goofy fun for the students. Well, as a promotion for this he was taking pictures of the boys who were taking part. He had a kid alone in his classroom, taking pictures of him with his shirt off, and he walked over and pulled the kid's pants down. The police raided his house and of course they found much worse. He served time. I think he still lives in town. Everybody knew there's something a little off about my 10th grade algebra teacher. I wasn't a particular fan of his either, because he always seemed to give me a hard time. I have fairly severe AD, and at the time I was living and medicated, for reasons I'd have to go on a tangent to explain. Needless to say, he'd single me out for a number of reasons, like doing my work the wrong way, even though I'd get the right answers. He never really seemed to care much about my academic progress, and didn't bother to help much. What I didn't notice at the time was that it was because I was a boy. He was also the girls' cross-country coach. He was fired and arrested for sexual assault. Good riddance, I say. My 9th grade social studies teacher got arrested for shooting heroin in the bathroom in between classes. One time she tried telling us that the Holocaust was made up and she's only telling us about it because they make her. Wasn't too happy when I told her my grandma was a survivor.